All right, welcome to class. Today we are going to continue our study of arrays by talking about two-dimensional arrays. All right, and just like any other variable type, it's used to store data, right? And so I have some examples here where, if you have ever worked on a spreadsheet, like on Google Sheets or Microsoft Excel, you have like rows and columns to store all these data. Okay, so like behind the scenes in this program, there's what's called a two-dimensional array that keeps track of all of that information. All right, another one, I know this is pretty primitive, but this is back in the basic days of game programming, right? You had Mario here, and really to keep track of Mario, what he looked like, and make him move, you just had like a 2D array which had different colors in it, and those colors came together in little pixels, and that made Mario, right? And then you just change the little pixels to make Mario move. All right, so in a lot of programs, you store data in these two-dimensional arrays. Okay, and so one that I've programmed just as an example is this Battleship game, which I think I've shown a couple times in class maybe. But basically, I've got to keep track of all these different spots, right? So it's like a grid of 10 by 10 squares, and I have one on this side and one on this side. So I have two two-dimensional arrays that track each spot. Like, is it a hit, a ship, a miss, or unknown, right? So that's how I play the game essentially, is keep track of each little square um, in the in the game, and then to make them display, I just go through and say, if it is a ship, I display blue. If it's a hit, I display red. If it's a miss, I display black. Okay, so there's 2D arrays behind the scenes here tracking what's going on in this battleship program. Okay, so it's basically a special type of data structure, a way to store data that are used quite a bit. And that's our goal, is to learn how to store data and program with these two-dimensional arrays. Okay, so just a couple things. So again, these notes, you can reference them. These are actually probably pretty good to have, because when you like create a 2D array, there's kind of a lot going on. But basically, when we did a 1D array, right, we only did this int bracket bracket. That was a one-dimensional array. And now if we want 2 dimensions, you just do the bracket bracket again. All right, and then you give it the name like always. And then on this side, if we do new int, this first number is the rows and the second number is the columns, right? So this would create a new array with 5 rows and 10 columns, and they're all initialized to 0. All right, so it actually sort of looks like this is what it would be, is you have 5 rows, 10 columns with a bunch of zeros inside of it. All right, and I think this is a good visual of a 2D array is actually an array of arrays. All right, so remember like how you can make an array of anything, right? Like you can make them with strings and ints or whatever. But basically, if you look at this outer sort of bracket, this defines an array, right? And then each side inside of it, there are 5 elements, right? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And each one of those elements is an array itself, right? So if you look, the 0 element is this array, and then there's a comma, and then we have our next array, comma, right? So another way to think of a 2D array is actually an array of arrays. All right. So yeah, it's got rows, columns, and then this specifies how many rows and columns. All right, so here's, I guess, another picture of it where, this is a 2D array. And then again, if I do, maybe I should type some code out here for you. So if you type, the name is matrix. So if I type matrix and then do position 0 or something like that, that actually gets you an array, right? And specifically, that gets you this array here, this first one. All right, so because it's an array of arrays, if I do element 0, that gets you that one, right? And then if I do, say, right, if I do matrix position 1, that would get you the next one, right? So that would get us the second row in here, all right? And then if I want to get a specific value, let's say I want to get this one, let's say a number, like I want to hit this 0 right here, or whatever. So then I would type matrix, okay, and then I would do the row I'm on. So the row would be 1, and then I would do the column, which would be index 3. All right, so basically, if you do bracket bracket with 2 numbers in there, that gets you a specific, in this case, int, it looks like. All right, so maybe I'll draw a little arrow pointing to that. Okay, so that's how you access the elements is, a single, if you just do one, you're going to get a 1D array, right? But if you do both of them, you'll get actually an int or a string or whatever the type of variable that's stored in your 2D array is. Okay, in this case, it's ints. All right. Oftentimes you want to know how many rows and columns you have. And so if you do matrix.length, right, that gets you how many elements there are in the array. Remember, it's an array of arrays. So in this case, matrix.length will get you the rows, which is 5, right? Because there are 5 different arrays in the 2D array. Okay, and then the matrix, and if you do a position.length, right? So if you do matrix, like basically I could do it up here again. If I do matrix 0, right, that'll get you the array, that first row there. And then if you do that length of that, that will get you how many columns there are, right? Because this will get me this 1D array, and then if I call that length on that, it'll give me the number of columns. Okay, so like this we'll do in our code notes here later, but this is matrix.length is the rows, and matrix specify a position.length is the columns, number of columns, right? And that'll be useful when you're writing loops and stuff like that. All right, and this is from our book, which again, I'm not gonna have you write it down because you can look it up on the PDF notes, and it might be good to reference when you're first creating these, and we'll actually do it in our code notes here in a second too, but here's how you create them, right? So this is, we already talked through about it. This one would be a 2D array of doubles. So you do double, bracket, 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 name, new, double, right? The type of thing. And then this specifies the rows and columns. All right. And then if you want to initialize the values right away, which is certainly, this one to initialize them all to 0. But if you want to actually specify them, you do int bracket bracket. So this would be a 2D array of ints, give it a name, and then you just put the elements like this. And so you do an array, comma, another array, comma, another array, comma, another array, comma, right? And so this big array here is made up of little arrays, right? And these actually don't have to have the same length. Most of the time they will. So you'll have like a rectangular 2D array, but you actually don't have to. There's situations where you might not want to store your data that way. All right, and so just, there's a lot of situations where you will have data that comes up in a table. So basically, anytime you have a table, you're going to want to have like a 2D array to store that information. So let's say that these are some like metals that nations have won in gold, bronze, silver. So this is a 2D array of like, what would this be, 7 rows, I think, and 3 columns. Okay, so if I was programming this to track how many medals each country won or whatever, you could set it, you could initialize it like this. So this first example, I don't know why you could just type the 7 and 3 here, but they did it a little bit different. But anyways, that would make it all zeros. And then if they already had some medals won, then you could, specify it this way. And then you could change it, right? So like, let's say we need to increase this to 2 medals right here, right? Maybe that's a bad one. That one's gonna have the same. Let me do it quite different. Let's do this one right here. If I wanted to increase that one, I could just find that position, right? So all I'd have to do is counts, and then I would be in, let's say I do the row first, so 0, 1, 2, 3. So it would be index 3, even though it's technically the 4th row, right? And then I would do, let's see, the columns. So the columns would be 0, 1, 2. So I do column 2, right? And that'll actually get me this int of 0. And then I can do whatever I want. So I can do plus plus, or I could add 1 to it, however you want to do it. But I would just do maybe plus plus, and that'll increase this spot to be 1. Okay, so here's how you initialize it, and then you reference the individual ints by specifying the index for the row, which in this case is 3, and the column, which is 2. All right, that's it for our initial explanation. Again, these notes, if you want to reference them, they're PDF notes. I'll put them out on Schoology, might be kind of useful for you. Thanks for watching.